Coming to you viewers live from the Trump Town Mahal in Atlantic City, New Jersey on Friday, May the 15th, 1992, live with Dan Duva Promotions and Russell Peltz, matchmaker, with Earl Shaw, Charles Wilson, and Eric Wurzmer of the Doctors involved in the outside ring, brings you the main event of the Michael Moore versus Bert Cooper main event. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Mr. GLOAT podcast. And before we get to this show makes me dearly miss the old days of boxing. It's been almost like probably 15 years back in 2011 when I actually watched this boxing fight on YouTube, which is kind of crazy because it was like 19 years ago. And I actually did watch it again a year later before I went to high school after the end of my years in the middle school, which were nothing much to talk about. So yeah, it's been... Yeah, and that was like 20 years after that fight as well, which is kind of crazy to look back at this time. So, yeah, this fight takes me dearly to the time when I really, really loved boxing. And even though my father and I and my brother and mother, we even once watched the Best Damn's Top 50. Guys, the Best Damn's Top 50 was mostly a reality show. Well, not a reality show. Let me look this up online to see what it was. The Best Damn Sports Moments were mostly the top 50 moments of people looking back at old videos. And there were a lot of great moments, such as the most devastating hits, the best slam dunks, blooper moments. It was all amazement. And there was one moment where they had the crazy moment. They showed us footage such as there was also devastating moments and wild moments in sports histories of all time, and even the great moments that were talked about. And there were moments when we used to even watch one of the sports moments at number 2, which we saw the moment about Mike Tyson biting Evander Holyfield's ear off. And then, of course, a few years before that, they show us the man in the parachute with Riddick Bowe and Holyfield too. So those moments were great back in the 2000s, and just too bad those days have come to an end, and I wish we can go back to those moments. It was great. And yes, the Bert Cooper and Michael Moore has been one of those moments that brought me more into boxing than it has ever since. So it just goes to show you this moment in sports kind of got me more into it than it is. So it just goes to show you it's a real moment in my heart. But guys, before we get to that, here's the information you viewers might want to know. So information-wise, we have been trying to find reports. There has been some new reports of Andy Ruiz as 5 days ago on Boxing Scenes. It stated that Andy Ruiz has been thinking of that he would at least have 2 fights to be ready for a Moses Atama fight. The problem is, guys, Andy Ruiz has been coming out from boxing every once in a couple years or so. And it just seems like ever since his Joshua 2 fight happened, he had a new trainer, this or that. It seemed like his career has been changed. It seemed like the fame got into him so much. And looking back at it, it was interesting. And he was getting prepared so much, even when he said he was ready for the Joshua fight, even after he took on Alexander Dimitrenko on April the 20th. And ever since, during the Jarrell Miller, when he failed a drug test, he was even getting more into the fight ever since, studying up the fighting more. And a lot of people didn't really think much of it. And a lot of people weren't talking much about the Joseph Parker fight he fought in 2016 with him. And of course, a year and a quarter later, Parker had his fight with Joshua. And, well, of course, everything else after that was mostly history for Parker. But there were ups and downs. But it just goes to show you. And they were even predicting they could have a rematch with him and Anthony Joshua for a trilogy, which would be interesting. And I would like to see that. They've even pointed out that Murat Gassiev had warned Moses Atama about the Andy Ruiz effect, believing that mostly, and this was actually last month ago, as he already pointed this out, before mostly turning professional, it just seems like this was too much of a huge risk to take. Because ever since trying to talk about him, just to say this before, guys, this was like a week before fighting Jermaine Franklin. So there was more to it than meets the eye. They believe that maybe he wasn't ready to fight someone like Gassiev, and believes that he wasn't ready for a fight against Andy Ruiz. So it was going to be hard to understand. And Gassiev was referring in 2019 about Ruiz's upset victory. So I can't say much about that other than it is a theory. And even though Rummy's Corner has already made a video online and an interesting thumbnail about the talk about Ruiz, which is interesting, I would recommend watching that. The next topic, guys, unfortunately, we have some terrible, terrible news. Two-time weight class champion, WBO Cruiserweight and WBC Bridgerweight champion Lawrence Okolie, in information, has been on hold. And information has stated that he might be out of boxing for a long time, because the information states that Lawrence Okolie, even though he has returned to adverse of his fighting of the date with Tony Yoka, which was a few days ago, and yesterday on Boxing Scene, they already pointed out one information about Okolie in adverse of finding on eve of the date with Tony Yoka. And then that same day, they pointed out that they had to replace Lawrence Okolie against Tony Yoka because of a drug test. YouTuber Liam Gull has already pointed out a video of Lawrence Okolie is in trouble. There has been reports that he might be suspended from boxing for a long time, just like how Jarrell Miller failed a drug test. Took him like no more than a few years to come back from boxing. So, yeah, and guys, even though I'm not a fan of Lawrence Okolie as much, even though I did got hyped up into him when he did win up to weight at the time, in 2024, he knocked out the Polish fighter, a short guy, in the first round to win the Bridgerweight, vacated the belt, fought against a nobody dude in December that same year for a WBC regional title, which I think it was America's title, scored a first round knockout on that as well. And I was thinking to myself, wow, Lawrence Okolie's a changed man. Like, I was more of a fan of him in 2024, and I was thinking to myself, oh, gee, this is going to be a good fight. And then he fights against Kevin Loranda, and we get a 10-round boring snooze fest, which are, again, and like I said before, just like Kevin Loranda and Lawrence Okolie, Loranda was an IBO Cruiserweight champion, and I think they still say he's a WBA Bridgerweight champion. I think I gotta look up which Bridgerweight. There's only 2 Bridgerweight titles out there, and just to be honest, I am gonna conclude the Bridgerweight title as a legit weight class, because 2 organizations have been counted for what they are. And, okay, Muslim Gadjimagomedov is still WBA. Okay, that's good. Kevin Loranda is still the WBC champion since October of 2024. So he was already an interim champion around that time when, even after he lost against Justice Hooney several months ago in March, which was the same show I reviewed during my first GLOAT podcast. Kind of crazy. Man, time goes by pretty slow for me in time when I don't talk about this stuff. But when looking back at it now, it goes pretty fast. But yeah, Kevin Loranda, it does say here that he's still champion. So, yeah. So, considering both Loranda and Okolie, both Bridgerweight champions, Cruiserweight champions, even though I do think in my brain that the IBO will be a major belt one day if one of the organizations goes out of business, and I am thinking the IBF might be that organization, because only God knows, like if God wants to put an organization out of business and one bad thing happens, we might get back to the 3-belt era. Maybe WBA, WBC, or WBO, or anything else. Or they'll just give us an IBO belt, and then, hey, we just looked at some past champions in the past that were never champion, and now they're major champion. And guess what? Chris Eubank Jr. is a major champion. Not really. He's IBO champion. Just like his father, Chris Eubanks Sr., back in the 90s, he only became WBO champion, which at the time was never a major belt. It was still a minor until 2007. All organizations made it major. And that's what I'm about to talk about for the reason why I'm going to talk about the Michael Moore and Bert Cooper fight in 1992, which is also the reason why I'm here to talk about that as well. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it is crazy. So after the Okali and Olorana fight, which was just Okali dominating the fight, and he didn't put no pizzazz in it. And the thing is, his body weight is so out of context. It's ridiculous. So, as looking up on BoxRec right now, give me a second here. So, for the information, it does say that Alexander Usyk is number 9 of the greatest boxers in pound for pound. And with Inoue and Junto Nakatani, there has been promo package videos in Japan recording their workouts, and videos online have shown that these guys are built up for a fight for May the 2nd. And with Shakur Stevenson being number 2 of the greatest boxer pound for pound of all weight classes, with Jaron Ennis at number 4. Canelo Saul Alvarez is at number 5. Benavidez is at number 6. Benavidez says after he even takes on Gilberto Ramirez and wins, it's said that he might even go back to weight class to the light heavyweight to fight against Bivol or even Beterbiev, which is ridiculous. And they even said that sometime that he even said that he was going to go up to heavyweight to fight. So we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know if there's any type of reason for some reason, because at this moment we're trying to find out what Benavidez is going to do. Bam Rodriguez, we've already talked about him. He's already fighting in a new weight class. Oh boy, don't like that. Devin Haney, number 8, and Emmanuel Navarrete is number 10. So pretty much, with all that being said, the heavyweight division for Tony Yoka, the gold medalist of the 2016 Olympic Games, who was ranked number 34 as of right now, and Lawrence Okoli's number 7. We don't know the information as the April the 25th fight has been called off. So technically, BoxRec has gotten rid of that fight as we speak. So if I have to look up the date fights for April the 25th in France, which I'm going to do right now on BoxRec, it's okay. What fights do we have in France? Is this the show we're talking about? I hope this is the one we're talking about, because we have a WBC International Super Welterweight vacant fight in France live on Fight Nation. 16-0-1 fighter named Mohamed Adi taking on Yuzma Lima, a 15-2 fighter. I don't know if this is the show. And man, wow, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Dude, there's 10. On April the 25th, there's 10 boxing events in France right now on May the 25th. So I really don't know which one of these. Dude, this is ridiculous. Okay, so technically we don't know. Technically, I don't even know. No, we have another one. No, that's definitely can't be that one. Okay, so I guess they got rid of the event. I guess BoxRec got rid of it. This is ridiculous. So technically, all I could say about the information right now here is so ridiculous. Man. So technically, all I could say is, with all this stuff being here, as of today, it says that Lawrence Okoli's fight to clear his name might now be difficult. All I could say is I was trying to give Lawrence Okoli a chance to go for a world title fight. I was expecting that, as him being British, he was going to get an opportunity to start throwing some heads in on Agit Kabayel, and then he was going to get a lucky title fight, just like any other British fighter would, from Alexander Usyk. So at this moment, I'm like, now he's failed his opportunity. Like in the information here on Boxing Scene says, quote, within just an hour of us learning that WBC heavyweight title eliminator against Tony Yoka this Saturday was in danger of being canceled due to positive tests, O'Callaghan had jumped on Instagram to explain himself. In a statement posted Tuesday morning, the 33-year-old British fighter said, before anyone starts imagining the worst, following my bicep injury last year, I sustained an elbow injury on the same arm during this camp. I had a treatment on it, and now we are here. I truly hope sense prevails. I will, of course, be fully cooperating with all relevant authorities, and I'm confident any investigation will clear my name. I won't be making any further comment at this time. Thank you for all your support, and see you soon. All I can say is I hope O'Callaghan does get his opportunity one day, and maybe he might get a title shot. He might not win a heavyweight championship, but if he does get a title shot, hey, who knows? He might get a lucky break and might throw in something here. So it's possible he might get an opportunity. So because at this moment, with all this being said, the information here as I'm reading this does question the bag. Does he have what it takes to get this opportunity? And because at this moment, who knows? And by the way, before we talk about the show, I do have one more information to talk about. Rank number 3 boxer Angelina Lukas, aka Barbie, a 29-year-old woman that's fought 4 years in boxing since December of 2021, now in her 5th year of boxing. She's already boxed 4 years onto her career as a high school student from this of boxing. Sorry. With 16 wins, 9 knockouts, and 1 loss. And just to point this out, the most knockouts she's had from cornerman retirements, from retiring on the fighter's stool, is not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 times in her career. And some of the knockouts she has fought legit were a couple in 2024. Well, make that 3 in 2024. And the last one by the end of December a few months ago. The thing is, considering her being a WBO World Super Flyweight Championship vacant, and mostly she retained it vacantly twice. She lost against a woman in October of 2023 in her 6th pro fight. And of course, that would create controversy later on. She had a WIBA World Bantamweight Champion in January 2024. She was the WBF and WIBF World Super Flyweight Champion. And of course, some of our fights and content and professional fights, a lot took place in Bangkok, Thailand. She was an IBO World Super Flyweight. And there were so much controversies, like referees, discrimination, her punching people in the back of the head. There was a fight that she fought in February last year ago against a 1-0 fighter, and it stated that that woman named Toko, who was 1-0 at the time when fighting in Turkey against Angelina, stated that Angelina bought her while biting her. And by the end of the 2nd round, they had to quit on her stool due to her injury because of the cheating that Lukas has been brought in. Now, a YouTuber did upload a video a while back ago, some months ago, about Angelina Lukas's career and the media and her online stuff and all of this crazy stuff happening. Because a few months later, on June the 1st, she has a rematch against Daniela Asenjo, the woman that beated Angelina, the first woman to do it and the only one, or so we thought. Well, she quit on her stool after the end of round 6 in Angelina's country of Kazakhstan for the IBO World Super Flyweight Championship. And you think to yourself, well, hey, she got the win. Legit. It stated that Daniela was actually threatened by the people that she had to quit to protect her life because of this. So at this moment, we were getting more controversial than it is. And you think to yourself, well, Angelina might do better. Well, guess what? On November the 14th, she takes on a 7-5 fighter named Catherine Renee, 10 rounds the distance in the country of Giza. Yeah. Unfortunately, with one judge scoring it 98-92 for Angelina, two judges had 96-94 for Renee. And after the fight, it stated that Angelina and her trainer or manager at the time argued the decision while they already announced the winner. And crazy or not, it stated that in BoxRec, quote, results initially announced split decision win for Renee, but following an investigation by EPBA, the decision was changed to a no contest. So it stated that for reasons that because this was mostly not much of it, of a, I don't know what to say. There was information of a WBA situation here that WBA, because I think this was ranked as a WBA. It's been a while since I last saw information about something like this, and I'm going to try to look this up again. I'm going to try to find Angelina Lukas's name. I wonder if her information can pop up here. No, it won't. Okay, well, this is going to stink. I got to look up, find more information about this. Angelina Lukas. Just to let you viewers know, Angelina Lukas is a beautiful woman. And, of course, when you call your nickname by Barbie and you're known for punching and hurting people and the referee doesn't do nothing about it, that's when you're witnessing something is strange. Again, video information, everything happening. It's pretty tough to understand the information here. Trying to find information footage. Mostly all I can say is, with a competition going on, I can't find nothing about it. It's been a while for mostly, as I'm trying to find out. Here's some information by BoxingNewMexico.com stated about Lucas's bout ruled no contest. So let's just try to find the investigation here. So Andrew Rivera, on November the 18th, some days after the fight, and this is mostly a quick read here, the flyweight bout between New Mexico's Catherine and Angelina Lukas officially been ruled no contest, followed by the EPBA that the fight held in Egypt was originally announced to a split decision for Renee. According to information reflected on BoxRec and confirmed by sources close to the situation, the Lukas camp filed accusations that Lindemuth had taken a banned substance. After an internal review, the EPBA overturned the results pending further investigation. We are told the inquiry is still active. There are indications Lindemuth, Renee, may have undergone additional testing upon returning home, but nothing has been verified publicly. What was originally a split decision, one many observers felt should have been unanimous over Renee, has now been placed under a cloud of uncertainty. Renee has acknowledged the situation on social media, stating that she and her team will hold a press conference soon to address the allegations and provide clarity. Further updates will follow as more information becomes available. And there's actually been an information on, I think, the WBA, as some people stated that the WBA, because this was mostly a sanctioned fight of a WBA, I don't know. All I have to hear about this, it's been a while since I heard the YouTuber talked about it, that the WBA has still sanctioned this fight as a win for Renee, but BoxRec doesn't count it. Why? I assumed because BoxRec doesn't believe the WBA organization exists anymore since 2024 due to a controversy of another online site ranking boxers. states for that reason. Why? Because the WBA does not exist in BoxRec no more, so they're not going to listen to what the WBA says because of that. So they just say it's a no contest because they don't believe it, what the WBA says. All I can say is that's my opinion. That's my opinion why BoxRec is still counting this fight as a no contest. But then a month later, on December the 3rd, Angelina fights against another fighter from Egypt, this time in Dubai, for the WBF World Super Flyweight title, wins by round 4 TKO, if it was legit. Now she's taken on an 8-2-1 fighter for the vacant WBF World Super Bantamweight champion on April the 26th, just 4 days away from now, as this fight is going to take place from the country of Azerbaijan by promoter Tariel Jafarov for TJ Promotion. Alice Mbiu, the 8-2-1 fighter, only has 8 wins, 3 knockouts, 2 losses, and 1 draw. Some of her fights have been dominantly. She has lost by majority decision, and some fights against 2-0 fighters and nobodies. She has scored some knockouts, a draw, and even though her last fights have been easy since November and December, some people believe that even though, as I'm looking this up online right now, as I'm going to Topology to look up Angelina's rankings for what Angelina has, unfortunately, we don't got information of Angelina Lukas on Topology.com stating that she's going to fight Alice Mbiu, but we do have information confirmation on this Sunday on April the 26th in Ganja, Azerbaijan. Let me pronounce that country's name right so you guys will pronounce it correctly. I know it's been almost 30 minutes, but again, this is information you guys have to find out because it's ridiculous.
Azerbaijan.
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 Azerbaijan. I don't know if that's how you spell it correctly. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it right, but sure. So yeah, with all that being said, with Angelina Lukas being ranked number 3 in the bantamweight, and she's trying to fight for a world title, and looking at the competition, her resume, and the history and the background and the fights and her social media and most of the information, I'm not gonna try to crap talk Angelina as much. I don't want to be into that situation. And let me look up the information here. The YouTuber's name, by the way. Oh my gosh, stop it. The YouTuber's name, by the way, is Nerera Fight Stories. He's a guy that's already made videos about a fighter named Rohit Singh 4 months ago. He made a video about George Kawagi last year ago, the guy with the fake muscle plants and fixed fights. He's talked about an MMA fighter as well that's done fixed fights and such and fighting nobodies. So looking at that perspectively does say a lot. And as I said before, he already uploaded the video on February the 23rd, the same day, even the day after the fight with Clarissa Shields and French-on Cruz de Zern. So this is somewhat a couple months old right now, so I really can't say much about that. But again, I don't want to point out for what Angelina Lukas is doing, but if I was in her shoes right now, I would try to just keep boxing. Because if this is what boxing is for you, I don't want to condone fighters getting hurt because of this type of stuff. And I don't want people to get hurt. And I don't want to mouth talk anyone, but I think we have to be wise about our decisions in boxing. If we're these type of people, I don't want anyone to get hurt or even controversialized by this. So if Alice Mbiu is watching this, you have to think to yourself, I gotta quit. I'm not going to be in this fight with Angelina, because all I can say is I just hope she just takes the dive and just walks away. Even if again, I just think it's probably for the best to do that, because in this situation, I just don't think it's a good idea for you to box in this situation. And even though it stated that Angelina moved to America just recently, so we don't know what her competition is. She was ranked in the top 5 in the super flyweight just around February, and for some reason, she just got ranked in the bantamweight even some time after the video was uploaded. So I don't know what to say about this. I really just have no idea why this situation is happening, but again, I just hope we put the minds together and just go away with the dodo birds, because that's all I can say about this. But by the way, guys, before we get to our last information here, before we get down to business here, there is one piece of information I do want to talk about. For Wrestling Observer newsletter, I've been trying to find information of what's been happening around the years of 1992 on May the 15th. And even though I can't say much about anything here yet, because even though I do try to find out some information as best we could, and mostly other things as well, as we try to find information while we go on. So with all this being said, we're going to try to be a little bit open-minded here and see what we can say. So guys, what's been happening on May the 11th of 1992 is that there's been information. Information in professional boxing and the history of boxing has been a little bit surprised in the history of the news at the time, because with all this stuff happening here, we have been creating some interesting information here. For instance, of May of 1992, we've already had information of Mike Tyson trying to face off with mostly the court battles and everything else that's happened to him, as he's been sent to jail ever since during July, after his last fight with a rematch, he fought against someone. And surprisingly enough, with all that being said, he's been in jail as of right now at this moment. So with all that being said, we don't know much about how long he might be. They said that he's already stated 6 years in jail, but he'll be out in 3 years for good behavior to come back in 1995. As of right now, as we speak, in boxing, we've already heard last month ago with George Foreman trying to defeat Alex Stewart for a majority decision, with James Toney defeating Glenn Wolfe by unanimous decision for the IBF Lineal-Weight Championship in the middleweight. And ever since then, we already have Evander Holyfield trying to defend his entire undisputed belt against Larry Holmes next month on June the 19th. While WBA and IBF heavyweight title eliminator with Pierre Coetzee will take on Riddick Bowe on July the 18th. So we have confirmation for that as we speak, for most of the division as we speak. Wrestling observers have already pointed out information as Sid Justice has been suspended from WWF for unprofessional conduct, as he's been in rumors that Sid has actually quit the company in the meantime, as Papa Shango has been put into a feud with Warrior, who Sid was working house shows with last week. Dave Meltzer reported that a top star had been caught trying to cheat a drug test prior to WrestleMania, and this week he confirms that it was indeed Sid who had been caught, but since he was in the main event of WrestleMania and had been advertised for the European tour afterwards, he was never suspended until now. And I do find that funny about drug tests, which is kind of funny because this is 1992. And even though with information wise, I got to understand. Let me look up the Phil Donahue show about WWE at the time. Information about tabloids of the 1992, because like I said before, guys, this was around the time during steroids and other information, because on March the 16th, 1992, for 29 years, the daytime TV show host of Phil Donahue thrived on inviting the controversial guests of welcoming controversial topics. As on March the 16th, Donahue's show was a wild spectacle. As 2 months ago, this was 2 months before this fight happened with Bert Cooper and Michael Moore. So this whole information is crazy. So keep that in mind. It's stated here that at the time, the inner turmoil within the WWE, that the trailer made for tabloid television, with information talking about a reporter that got fired a month because he couldn't have sex with one of the announcers, or even, we don't know if it was a ring announcer or if it was Pat Patterson or even the other person. I forgot which one was the other. I know it was a ring announcer, Pat Patterson, and another person that was actually suspended due to sexual behavior for young boys and grown men. And a reporter got reported for that. Another guy that was like 18 years old or even almost 20 years old back in 1978 was trying to come in to talk about the story of how at the time they weren't making a lot of money, and there were information of them driving road to road and someone asking them to, hey, let's make love, let's do this or that. And another guy came in around the time in 1985 telling Vince McMahon about the incident. And Vince McMahon was the person saying, we never look the other way for anything, and saying this or that. But the real information came after 20 minutes of talking in the table. They brought in wrestlers for Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino. They brought in the wrestler observer of Dave Meltzer that was there at the time next to Vince McMahon, and kind of actually said something that he might have shouldn't have said, after Vince McMahon once said, I wasn't devastated, which was dumb enough. There was some interesting, surprising reports about that. And I have seen the interview, the documentary, and even people in the audience wanted to talk on the mic on Phil Donahue, and the entirety of it was so bad. It took them over 40 minutes almost 40 minutes until they had the first person talking on the mic. And I can understand why Phil Donahue didn't want people on the mic to talk so much about it, because I'm sure some of the information where people were going to talk about, oh, is wrestling fake? Is wrestling real? Oh, why are people doing this? Because there was, the last minute of the episode did end it with one woman saying, oh, is wrestling fake? And then everyone saying, this has nothing to do with it. You have wrestlers talking to the person. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And you have Phil Donahue saying this or that. But most of it was about crime. And people talk about the $1 million, this or that. So I can understand why Phil Donahue didn't want to go on the mic and start handing out the mic to people to talk about this. And there were even two people that were saying the exact same question. What is the percentage of homosexuals in wrestling? And again, it was ridiculous. So there was not a lot of talk in the audience, which I think I can understand why Phil Donahue did it. And again, the information of Bruno Sammartino and some of the stuff he was talking about, even when he came back from wrestling, even after his retirement, about the drugs happening. Superstar Billy Graham, he even had to point out information of how he actually found one of the ring boys that was getting his crotch grabbed during when a ring boy was setting up a ring, and one of the people were there at the time of Pat Patterson grabbing a kid by the crotch. And then he even pointed out the information about another story about how one of the other executives that was also suspended, forgot his name, was also involved by a kid getting his crotch grabbed while in a car. And he even had to point out information about Dr. Zahorian and about the whole drug situation and everything else happening. And he was muttering so much that Phil had to stop him so much for how cranky he was. And he had to stop him so much to say, we'll be right back after a break, because Billy Graham was over it. He was on fire. So Billy Graham, it's hard for me to understand what stuff is Billy Graham telling the truth, because I don't know if Billy Graham was telling the truth much. And even the Dark Side of the Ring episode of Dark Side of the Ring did have the information of them saying that he wasn't telling the truth. So we don't know what truth he was talking about, this or that. It was hard. So yeah, that entire episode was crazy. And like I said before, the lesser-known grapplers of Barry Orton, Tom Hankins, of the journalist, John Arezzi was also there at the time, just like with Dave Meltzer, both journalists and the Wrestler Observer. And even though Vince McMahon was trying to confront the accusation as best they could, trying to tell them, oh, why don't you report this to the authorities? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And of course, again, it just goes to show you, it was tough. And of course, they did talk about the information of how Hulk Hogan went to Arsenio Hall and reported that he only took steroids 3 times. So the whole information about this is so controversial. It just makes you wonder how ridiculous all of this was. The whole scandal, the entirety of this whole stuff, it was crazy. It was crazy. And like I said before, Billy Graham had so much information to say. He did. He even talked about the story about Rick McGraw, a guy that almost might have been one of the only wrestlers that might have taken steroids and almost got killed from it, but died years later before WrestleMania, who was one of the people that were listed as the wrestlers that died young on the Nancy Grace, when Nancy Grace was talking about the Ultimate Warrior dying and had Diamond Dallas Page on her show, and Rick McGraw was part of that list. So at least one of the wrestlers were counted as wrestlers that died from steroids from Nancy Grace's show there. So, but man, oh man, it is funny. It's just ridiculous to look at all this information and just say to yourself, what is going on in the professional? It's just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that it just makes you wonder how much ridiculous stuff is happening behind the scenes. So yeah, and with Sid Vicious also involved with the drug fails 2 months later, as we're getting to this show with the Bert Cooper and Michael Moore show, it just goes to show you that 1992 is a really tough year for the entirety of combat sports. Again, guys, Monday Night Raw would not exist in WWE until January of 1993. So January would be the month of 93 and the year when Monday Night Raw would become would actually exist. So yeah, it is crazy. It's just so crazy because of all of this crazy stuff happening, and Sid Vicious also getting suspended with everything happening here. It just goes to show you, with all of this stuff happening, there's just a lot of crazy stuff in professional wrestling as we speak. It's ridiculous. I could talk about the other stuff about what Dave Meltzer said on the Wrestling Observer on May the 11th, 1992. But again, the real information is boxing. So like I said before, guys, here's the information of the show. Dan Duva is the promoter of this show. The WBO is not a legit title at the time. And before we even talk about the fights on the show, which I'm going to talk about the main event more than anything else, here's what's been going on with the main event fighters. So Bert Cooper has already been suffering so many losses. He's lost against guys like Reggie Gross in '86 after he was only a year and a half in his career of boxing. He lost against Carl Williams by a round 7 knockout, lost by cornerman stoppage in 1987. He's lost against a journeyman fighter of Everett Martin. And his entire run of career in boxing has been hard enough. He lost against guys like promising contender of Nate Miller. He lost against George Foreman in June the 1st when George Foreman, due to a controversy as the Arizona Commission looked to uphold Cooper's purse, feeling that Cooper quit without just cause because the fight ended after the end of round 2 when he stepped off his stool and ended the fight with Foreman winning by a round 2 knockout. He lost against Ray Mercer when Ray Mercer was 15-0 at the time, and Ray Mercer would have a couple more fights before he won the WBO belt, defended the belt against Tommy Morrison, which was a devastating fight. Riddick Bowe was 19-0 at the time, back in October of 1990. He actually defeated Bert Cooper in round 2 by knockout, over 2.5 months after Ray Mercer defeated him. So Bert Cooper hasn't been doing good, but since he was working with Rick Elvis Parker at the time, and ever since he defeated Joe Hip in October of 91, and Bert Cooper would be a late replacement or a long replacement for Mike Tyson, just like the rape allegations, and he would be sent to jail. So Evander Holyfield just got the replacement. Holyfield was scheduled to fight Tyson on November the 8th. It would be November the 23rd as they canceled the fight due to Tyson's rib injury and the whole this or that, blah, blah, blah. They were going to schedule to have Francisco Daminia, who was a former WBO champion at the time in the history. So with Bert Cooper stepping in and with Rick Elvis Parker trying to get one punch away, because about a year or so later, due to the allegations, is when this was around the time when Mark Gastineau was actually a professional boxer, when he was the all-pro defensive end for the New York Jets. He decided to become a professional boxer, and Rick Elvis Parker and one manager of Parker's team at the time stated that if they get Mark Gastineau in a 12-0 record, he would fight Foreman for a title or a fight for multi-million dollars. And if you guys have seen the documentary of 60 Minutes, which was only a 10 or 15-minute segment of talking about how Mark Gastineau was going to fight George Foreman if he goes 12-0, his 10th professional fight happened in June 92 when Tim Anderson defeated Mark Gastineau, which was not the plan. And they were bribing fighters to take dives so Mark Gastineau can win. Yeah, there were fixed fights in boxing. And the red light district at the time, back in the old days, were the dangerous of boxing. And man, oh man, it's still the case to this day, but less frequent. So with Bert Cooper almost defeating Evander Holyfield when he was one punch away from tens of millions of dollars, which is what Rick Elvis Parker said, and after the whole Mark Gastineau thing ended, and then Tim Doc Anderson got poisoned during a rematch with Mark Gastineau, and the whole story about that happening was bad enough. It was terrible to just see how all of that stuff happening. And of course, Rick Elvis Parker threatened to kill Tim Doc Anderson's sister, who was quadriplegic, and Tim Anderson killed Rick Elvis Parker, shooting him and killing him. He's been sentenced to prison, and as of right now, as talking about this, information says that he's still in prison as of right now, which we don't know. There is footage of the fight that happened with Anderson and Gastineau too, and with all of that happening, it's just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous to see all of this happen all at once for how controversial it is. It's bad because of it. Like, I just don't know what to say about it. Because with Tim Doc Anderson still, after all of these years, he's still in prison. It's pretty bad. It's just the worst thing because no one wants to see that. Because Tim Anderson protected his sister by this idiot that was fixing fights for an NFL player that was trying to get multi-millions of dollars. And he was being questioned so much by people taking dives from Mark Gastineau. That's how bad this was. It just upsets me about that, and I just don't understand. I just don't understand why this stuff has to go awry. For all reasons, it's just so controversial. It really is. So Bert Cooper had to fight against a nobody in February of '92, and now we're here. 3 months later, he's getting another opportunity. Michael Moore, on the other hand, Michael Moore already took himself over 10 professional fights. 12. It took him 12 professional fights to win the vacant WBO light heavyweight champion. He has multiple title defenses, and some of his competition weren't that bad. He had some couple undefeated fighters, a 19-1 fighter, but the competition was dim, poor, and not good. Ever since he went up to heavyweight by the start of 1991, he had a couple nobody wins. His fight against Alex Stewart was his first big deal. And after that, he knocked out another opponent in November, won the fight. But then suddenly, in February the 1st and March the 17th, he fought against two fighters, a tall guy named Mike Wolf, went 10 rounds to decision for the first time, which was the first decision for Michael Moore. He fought against Everett Martin, who was his last 6 fights were losses at the time. And Everett knocked out Moore in the 3rd round for the first time in Moore's career. And the points decision went on for Moore. So, yeah, it's actually terrible for what it is to see that type of competition. Like, having Moore going undefeated, winning multiple fights by knockout, and his first ever fights go to decision is ridiculous. So now we're 2 months into this right now, and now we have Bert Cooper and Michael Moore fighting for a WBO belt. So the fight isn't about titles, it's about who can punch the hardest, and that's what we see here. So that's what we're about to talk about, and for all that being intents and purposes, it's pretty decent to talk about. So guys, the first fight on the show, which I don't really know much about the fight card yet, so let's look up the information here as we speak. The fight card for Michael Moore and Bert Cooper. Let's try to find out this. All right, what's the fight card? I'm trying to look up the fight card. Okay, yeah, not the fight. I'm trying to find out who fought the first fight. Technically, I really can't tell. Interesting. Very interesting. So with all that being said, okay, so I'm just gonna have to read these fights from start to finish and just fill in the blanks. Now, just to let you guys know, the videos I try to find online about these professional fights kind of stink because there's not a lot to this. But what I do have to tell you, viewers, isn't much to talk about. So the first fight, mostly there is no footage of this fight, is Arturo Gatti versus Joe Lafrontant. Arturo Gatti is 5-0 at the time, with Joe 2-1. The fight comes in as a 6-round decision. Arturo Gatti wins the fight, but unfortunately, his career would actually be a little bit disastrous after the fight. And there's also another fighter on this show as well that was supposed to be a promising contender, just like Arturo Gatti, if he was going to have an undefeated record or not. And he failed as well. And the reason I'm talking about this show is not because of the WBO belt being minor weight, but also the controversy happening in boxing for the competition and the talent that's being wasted. So, with the fights being in hand, the next fight on the show was Nick Rupa an 18-0 fighter taking on Paul Denard, a 5-7-1 fighter. So with Arturo Gatti winning a 6-fight decision and Nick Rupa winning his 19th pro fight by an 8-round decision, this would not go its way because about 6 months later, on November the 17th, Arturo Gatti would take on a 6-1-3 fighter named King Solomon. The fight would last in a 6-round split decision where 2 judges scored it for King Solomon, giving Arturo Gatti his first professional loss. Even though Arturo would recover from this and start winning multiple fights after this, and would go on to win the IBF Super Featherweight in December the 15th, 1995 against longtime competitor Tracy Harris Patterson. But unfortunately, with some of his career and his stuff on the line with Angel Mafredo and Ivan Robinson twice in 1998 by losses, and even with his loss against Oscar De La Hoya and his trilogy fights in 2002 and 2003 with Mickey Ward, only to become super lightweight champion, and then lose against Floyd Mayweather, and the rest of his career by that would come to an end. I really can't say much about Nick Rupa. Nick Rupa's career, on the other hand, would actually come to a disastrous end a lot sooner than Arturo Gatti, because 3 months later, on August the 11th, Nick Rupa would have his 20th professional fight against 33-1 fighter Anthony Jones, which was Nick Rupa's first big legit fight. The fight ended in a split decision as well in Atlantic City and another place in the Harrah's Marina Hotel and Casino by split decision. And after this, by 93, Nick's career would come to an end. He lost a 10-round decision against Aaron Davis, a 35-1 fighter. He had a USBA IBF welterweight fight against someone that same year, scored a draw, take on James McGirt, another longtime journeyman contender, which lasted 10 rounds by decision. And again, this guy's career, he would take on Terry Norris on January 1997 for the IBF and WBC belts, but unfortunately he got knocked out by round 10 by TKO, and his last dangerous losses were against David Reed, and in 2000 would be his last professional fight against fighters Shannon Taylor and Mads Larson, and both of them were utter defeats. So it just goes to show you what talent Dan Duval was trying to promote in 1992, and it just goes to show you it really is a tough job. It just goes to show you that back in those days, even though in today's world, social media is messing with our minds because we're not as tough fighters as fighters used to be back in the day. Now people are fighting for money and not for fame, or even maybe for fame, but maybe not for fortune. Maybe not for taking this competition seriously because they're not that good. But back in 1992, Arturo Gatti and Nick Rupa, 2 fights that never that happened on this show, but not recorded live at the time. Yeah, it just goes to show you this is what competition was back in the day, and it just kind of stinks to see that talent being wasted for no reason. So it kind of stinks because I really don't want to see talent being wasted like that. But again, it just goes to show you what competition was back in those days. But anyway, guys, the real competition does come out a lot smoothly than it already is. Because the real fight just comes out of left field. It comes out of left field like never before. So with Joe Goosen as a commentator for TVKO and another announcer that I forgot name of the show at the time, have already pointed out information. Now we're on live TV at this moment with new fights competition. The first fight is Gerald McClellan versus Carl Sullivan. Gerald McClellan has already been on fire. Even with his first professional losses in 1989 were sufferable to watch, but they were close fights, not dominant for him. So he managed to survive and recover from those fights. In November the 20th, 1991, he fought against John Mukabe, the guy that fought against Marvin Hagler. I think it was Marvin Hagler at the time. And was it Marvin Hagler? No, it was. Yeah, it was. It was actually the last fight Marvin Hagler won 1 year before Hagler took on Sugar Ray Leonard, and that ended in the first round by TKO, making Gerald McClellan a WBO World Middleweight Championship. But unfortunately, he vacated the title, and at this moment, he fought another fight in February. At that time, now he is fighting on this show. So the competition about McClellan is he's a fighter that starts quickly. He's on pressure no matter what. So McClellan is that much of a fighter that's on the pressure. He starts to fight quickly, and he's that dangerous. He's a 6'1" tall dude, and even though we're only a few years away from his demise, not his fatality, but how his life would change for good, for the New Jersey state rules back in 1992 stated that it was a 10-point must-score system. Standing 8 counts are in effect. 3 knockdown rule are legal at this time. Still, 3 knockdown rules are effective. You cannot be saved by the bell in any round. Doctor or referees can stop the fight. So that's all you have to know about the New Jersey state rules. With Michael Buffer being on the top end here, that's all we have to know. So with all this being said, the competition is here. So as for Michael Buffer announcing the fighters, referee gives them the instructions. They show us TV KO, that first round knockout scored by each fighter. Carl Sullivan has only scored 1 first round knockout, and McClellan has scored 15 in his career. So they're expecting to have a 16th knockout win in this fight. So the fight just comes out as just a normal, tough fight that just lasted under a minute. So mostly McClellan in yellow or gold, green trunks for Sullivan. And Sullivan is trying to back up, trying to throw a couple jabs here or there to scare off Gerald. Gerald throws more punches to block him. He goes forward, throws a left jab, and then he goes in for a body punch. Sullivan tries to throw a heavy right, misses. And then more jabs for Gerald. And before you know it, he goes for a jab upstairs and a jab downstairs, scares off Sullivan, pushes him to the corner. And then as he does it, he sets up a fake left, right, down goes Carl, or not goes Carl. Carl just stumbles to the corner, and he stumbles so much that the punch affected him so much that Gerald managed to barrage the punches on him, hits him with a right, hits him with the left, down goes Carl, and the referee, as Sullivan tries to get back up, the referee does not hesitate. He just waves the fight off for no reason. So I don't know why they waved the fight off with 40 seconds of the fight coming to an end, as BoxRec states 45 seconds. The referee wards the fight off, and that's the end. And Gerald wins by first round knockout again. So it's a good start for a competition there. It was a good fight for what it was, because when you have to build up a fight while you have a heavyweight fight going on as we speak, it wasn't that bad. The replay does show a perfect punch to the cheekbone of Sullivan's cheek. He stumbles, loses balance. So I will say, though, great knockout punch for McClellan here. And mostly it wasn't much of a fight, like I said before, because the fight lasted only 45 seconds. But yeah, they go to post-fight interview, and mostly to try to ward off as much as they can. Because at this moment, they announce the winner, and with McClellan already feeling happy about what he's done, and he asks everyone that I was going to take my time and try to box, work, and jab and go up and down as best we could and try to hit him with every jab we can do. So McClellan at this time, I haven't heard much about it, but of course, at this time, like I said before, McClellan 24-2 and Carl Sullivan 12-4. It was a good win for him at this time. So by the end of 92, Gerald McClellan would recover from that entire charades in 89. He would have one pro fight in Mexico or in Caesar's Tahoe in Staten Island on November, scores another first-round knockout for the 17th fight. He fights against a journeyman fighter in February in Mexico for a second-round knockout, only to take on Julian Jackson in May, a full year later, or 358 days later, to win the WBC World Middleweight Championship, which was Jackson's 5th title defense in his career. So pretty much not bad. Not bad. The next fight on the show is a little bit surprising for what it is. Edwin Rosario versus Livingston Bramble. Now, Livingston Bramble passed away last year ago. His career has been on a high note of being a journeyman at this moment. And even though with his completed wins back in the 80s, surprising victories from top contenders, he has been on a hard end. He's lost against interesting fighters in competition, from Tony Martin to Santos Cardona. He lost against even a journeyman fighter in 88. And even after he lost against Edwin Rosario, as said before, in September of 86, after his other title defense in February, which was his first title defense. He even had matches with Ray Mancini back in 84 and 85. So with Livingston at this moment is over with. And with both competitors not in their prime no more, Edwin Rosario has also been on the falter this year. So with everything going on here, this wasn't going to be much of a competition here. And it was an end for him as we speak. As for Anthony Stevenson's career has already been faltered so hard from losses against some interesting competitors like Patricio Oliva, Harold Brasler, a longtime journeyman fighter. So he's already been on the top end. His last fight in October was against Tony Martin by a 10-round split decision, which is weird because Anthony scored a second-round knockout against Tony Martin, and for some weird reason, even though one judge had it 95-94 for him, the other judge had it 97-92 for Tony. The third judge, Lynn Carter, which I might assume is a male, I'll assume she's female, scored the fight 95-95 even, which makes no sense. Unless if that judge scored a 10-10 in one of the other rounds. So I can't say much about that. So, of course, Livingston is already not in his prime no more. They come into the first round of the fight, both study each other by throwing in everything they can do as best as they could to work on a good fight. Because, like I said before, Livingston, his career has been off a high-low situation. So before the bout starts, for some hilarious reason, mostly, the competition does start out not that much pleasing. So the first rounds of the fight were mostly an interesting assortments of two guys that are not really in the mood in the fight. They're not really in the competition. They both clinch each other. Livingston is wearing this entire white trunks black belt with Like, he's like a hula hula dancer. Like, I don't know what type of trunks he's wearing, but I can't explain it. Anthony is wearing a blue belt, black trunks. So mostly both guys, he does attack Anthony around the time. Both guys, as I said before, do study each other from the first rounds, throw jabs. Both are orthodox fighters. And then Anthony comes in with 1 minute and 15 seconds of the round. Livingston comes in, throws a good left, right punch, stumbles Anthony, pushes him to the ropes, connects multiple punches, and then Anthony bounces off the rope, bounces again, lands on the second middle bottom rope, scores a knockdown for the first round. 10-8 score. It was a surprising run for Livingston. Livingston decides to go all in for it and hit everything he does. And guys, what I love about this fight is so good. And guys, the reason I say that, in my opinion, this was a pretty good fight is because this might be the last greatest win for Livingston in his entire career. So the fight comes to an end in the first round. And at this moment, you're watching it. And I do think to myself, we're going to be here for a long night. So mostly the first round comes in with no problem whatsoever for Livingston. He scores a 10-8 score. We come to round two, and again, he comes in to attack Anthony. Anthony just comes in, trying to throw some couple left jabs. And of course, you can't say to yourself that he was on the edge like Livingston. Livingston, again, is on the offensive type in the middle rope. Anthony can sometimes come forward and throw some punches once and forever. And during the end of the final seconds of the fight, nothing happens other than they're just throwing jabs so close to each other. Livingston does attack him at the end for the final seconds to win the second round. But this is when things get interesting. Because we come to round three, live from New Jersey. Anthony is finally going for the attack formation. Not even 10 seconds or even 30 seconds in the first round. He throws jabs, he throws uppercuts, he throws crosses, takes out Livingston by throwing everything he has in the tray. He throws everything he does, sets up some several punch combination. He throws up left, uppercuts, jabs, crosses. Livingston just tried to go for an uppercut. He misses. And with only 1 minute left of the third round, Anthony takes a breath and does his usual thing. He throws jabs, scares off Livingston, does nothing bad, and mostly that's just the remainder of the round. And we come to it. And then come to round four, while Bert Sugar, by the way, it even stated that even though the scorecarder did point out Bramble won the first two rounds and the other won the third round, so we're both even. So at least we know who's winning the rounds. Bert Sugar of the Boxing Illustrated has already been on the tipping turn point. Did I even say that Bert Sugar was also part of this show because he was voiced as well? I think I don't know if I said Bert Sugar was on this show, but still, he had his own talk. But I'm not going to get into the announcers, so keep that in mind. So anyway, we go to round four. Round four and round five were the best rounds for Livingston. Because round four and round five were just simple rounds for him in the entire fight. Because all you see is him scaring off his opponent. Anthony just throwing jabs as best they could. They go for a great right-left punch combination. All Anthony's doing is just throwing left jabs, and sometimes he can go for a left and right jab once in a while. And Livingston just goes through the attack as much as they could. Now, he's not using much of his energy as much because I think he just ward off of it during the first couple rounds. But he does manage to get stuff into this fight. What makes this interesting is that no one expected Anthony to even go the distance of this, because I think some people thought that Anthony was done for in the first round. What I love about this fight is that you have this guy taking on a past prime fighter that's already in a losing streak of fights. And he might have an opportunity to take out a former world champion. It's crazy. So by the end of round 4, with Livingston losing that round, they come to commercial break, but before they do, they give us the information of coming up, we're going to have Michael Moore versus Bert Cooper. They show us footage of Bert Cooper getting his hands wrapped up in tape. And mostly they come back after commercial break for, they don't go to commercial break. They just show us footage of Bert Cooper taping up, showing us that the last fight on the show after this fight. So after the 5th round is over, or the 4th round is over, but coming after the 5th round, Livingston does everything he could to try to ward off as best as he could for Anthony. He does attack him to the ropes. Anthony is just clinching him the entire time of the fight. But what I do love about this fight is that Anthony does not give up. He puts in the effort as best as he could in the remainder of the rounds to actually ward off Livingston as best he could. Livingston is winning the fight, but the problem is Anthony is losing 1 point because he got knocked out. So if Livingston wins one more round in these last 5 rounds, it's over. Because the scorecard could be 95-94, even though both guys scored 5 rounds. The knockout in round 1 was the reason for Livingston's win. Anthony has to do something. And in round 6, Livingston finally gets a taste of his medicine. Anthony finally gets some uppercut in. He's getting some jabs in. And he's setting off, like, I don't know what to say, but like I said before, they're going clockwise, they go counterclockwise, they go jabs upstairs, downstairs. There is clinches. He does duck punches away from Livingston at one point. And with everything going on, he finally goes for the attack formation. Livingston does try to attack him off as his punches as best he could. He's trying to get him off. But as he's trying to, Anthony does manage to try to intimidate Livingston a little bit here. He goes for mostly some left jabs once in a while, as he always does, and sometimes 2-punch combinations. And he manages to not give Livingston any room whatsoever. Unfortunately, with only 1 minute left of the 6th round, they do clinch again, only for the referee to say timeout, because Livingston's left glove has been untaped. So they had to go back, take a timeout, put glove on Livingston again for the tape, and then continue the round. So they did have to stop the round a little bit for once in a while, but that gave Anthony a chance to attack him, put in the remainder of the round. And even though Livingston did do some of his counter punches and uppercuts once in a while, it seemed like Anthony managed to, even though Anthony was dancing around Livingston in the 6th round, and even though Livingston did try to attack him in the final round, in the final seconds of the 6th round, I feel like Anthony won that round for what so means necessary. So we go to the 7th round, and at this moment, Anthony finally is putting the offensive work in. He takes out Livingston. He's backing away from punches. Every time Livingston tries to throw some heavy punch or something, Anthony gets out of the way. And that 7th round, he manages to actually throw some good punch combinations. And you do think to yourself that, is this the end for Livingston? Because with only 1 minute and 15 seconds left of the round, Anthony does manage to try to clinch Livingston, where Livingston tries to attack him and they both clinch each other to the ropes. But again, it wasn't that he was trying to bore the fight. Like, I wasn't saying that this was a boring fight, but it was a surprising fight because you never know who was going to win the fight, depending if Anthony was going to come back. he was taking on a former champion, and this might be the only time he'll ever get that opportunity again. And Livingston, past his prime, is not in his rightful age anymore. The referee does give some warnings for maybe a low blow by Livingston at one point during the final seconds of the round, and then he just attacks Anthony in the final seconds as well, as he always does. But again, Anthony does win the round. The doctors, the crew do check on for Livingston, as he does have problems with one of his right eye. They get a cut man to check over for his eye just in case. But again, with all that being said, they do show us a great replay of a great right uppercut by Anthony. They go backstage. They go to Anthony's corner. His eye is also in a cut formation as well. So both guys are hurt. And then come the 8th round. Bramble does not hesitate. Bramble attacks. He uppercuts him. The referee gives him warning for heads. And again, both guys are clinching like never before in this 8th round. Bramble Livingston manages to stop Anthony at all time. So the 8th round wasn't much of an entertaining round, other than both of them were just trying to collide heads from each other, clinches and such. But it seemed like Bramble did a much better job in that round than anything else. Mostly it wasn't much of an entertaining round, but it was definitely an easy round for Bramble. Bramble did try to attack, did try to go for some uppercut and heavy punches into the ropes. Anthony did try to back away from some punches, but mostly for body punches to keep him up by the referee. But again, Bramble just managed to try to outbox Anthony at all time in the last seconds of the round. He attacks him, puts him in a corner. Anthony is missing every single punch. He goes left and right in the final seconds. Bramble ducks both, and Bramble wins the 8th round. So this is the moment when you're thinking to yourself what you have to do. So at this moment, the score is like 5-3 or 5-2. Bramble has already won the 8th round. Both of them, they do show us footage and replay of the barrage of punches they throw at each other in the center ring, the attack in the corner by Bramble. And with only 2 rounds to go, if Anthony does win the last 2 rounds, it's over because Livingston already won the fight. So he comes in, he has to score a knockout, he has to win the fight, and Livingston has to survive. But you don't know who the judges are scoring favor to. So we come to round 9. And with only 30 seconds into the 9th round, Livingston throws counter punches. He throws jabs. And as they tell them to break, the referee tells them to break for another clinch. As they continue the fight, the referee says time. They time the fight to check up on Anthony's face. Or so I thought. That's what I wrote. But what actually happened was that they checked on the glove of the left glove of Anthony's glove. And the trainer and other people actually used scissors or other things to wire tape on Anthony's glove. They show footage of Livingston in the corner, just in the neutral corner, waiting for his opportunity. It takes them like multiple minutes for them. So they clip off the glove. You see this huge tear on Anthony's left glove, and it's just so shriveled up for some reason. Like, these two guys are at it. They show a close-up of the glove where it's a huge gashing cut. It's broken. It's shredded. And it takes them a long friggin' time to continue the fight. So they wrap up a new glove for Anthony, I assume. And with all that being said, and as they're doing it, they're going from common opponents, showing that Tony Martin has it an L10 and a D10. So Tony Martin and Harold Brazier, they show us their common opponents for Bramble losing against Tony Martin by 10-round decision and a 10-round split decision draw by Steven. And Harold Brazier had a round 2 KO loss by Bramble, only for Harold to defeat Steven by a 10-round decision. So they show us their fights that they've already fought against the same opponent. So take that for what you will. But again, it wasn't much of a. It's nothing much. They just show us opponents they fought. So as with only 5.5 minutes left of the round, what did they do? They took a few minutes off. They took their break, and considering it took them a few minutes to get the glove back on, Bramble just comes in, tries to attack Anthony at all costs, but of course the fail comes to a fail because a minute later, with only 1 minute and 15 seconds left of the fight, Bramble finally comes in, throws some left jabs and heavy curves and everything else on Bramble. Bramble is trying to throw everything he can at the tub, but he fails to even try to hurt Anthony at all costs. Anthony comes in. Both guys are barraging punches at each other in the final round. And at this moment, with only 9 rounds of competition, the judge shows a scorecard giving Bramble round 1, 2, 4, 5, and 8, while the other has it 3, 6, 7, and 9 for Stevens. So, simple score. It's mostly an unofficial score. 86 to 85, as they shown it scored. And I do find that funny. Even though they show that the first round is a 10-8 for Bramble, it does have the score scored 86 to 85 after 9 rounds. So someone in the studio or the editing accidentally forgot to make it 86 to 84. So I guess we got a continuity error there, but I can't say much about that. And then we go to the final round. Both guys touch gloves, and they both go at each other. They're both barraging punches at each other like never before. Both guys are at it. Anthony and Bramble, they both I just don't know what to say. They just both head on each other like never before. They just go at each other like two monkeys trying to fight for a banana. This is just for a win to get them in the rankings. Anthony, Livingston, both broad punches at each other, and the referee's trying to break the clinches. Anthony throws uppercuts, straight lefts, everything at each other, and in the final minute, he finally hits Livingston, pushes him to the ropes. He's trying to finish the fight off. He's doing everything he could to try to even knock down Livingston. Livingston is not doing nothing. Livingston's trying to survive the last minute of the fight while everything is going on here. He tries to throw punches, but the referee keeps breaking clinch after clinch after clinch after clinch, and both wrestle each other. And the final 10 seconds, they do nothing but just punch, clinch, punch, 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 clinch, ding, ding. That is the end of the fight. Anthony gets it, but unfortunately, my score totals it 95 to 94. Livingston, the winner of this fight. And at the end of the day, guys, even though this wasn't a main event fight, I will say, though, with the Gerald McClellan fight being a good start for a first round knockout, this fight right here was the best fight of the night. I find this to be fight of the night. Even though I do find it to be a great performance for Anthony and Livingston, this was a great fight, great win. And even though they do show us replay of Livingston actually stumbling Anthony to the rope at one point, and then as they're actually getting a drink of water, you get to see Rick Elvis Parker standing next to Bramble. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you should not be there, brother. Because, guys, when they got rid of the replay, they show footage. They cut back live with Bramble getting a drink of water, and it shows Rick Elvis Parker, his glasses, his beard, his rock star formation, talking to Bramble. And it's just ridiculous of what we're seeing here. And he's standing behind Bramble the entire time as they're announcing the winner of the fight. So they come to a split decision as one judge, Judge Richard Strange, had it 95-94 for Anthony. Judge Frank Brunette had it 95-94 for Livingston. Eugene Williams had it 96-93. Winner by split decision, Livingston Bramble. And with all that being said, wow. And I will say wow because at the end of the day, even though this would be the last greatest win for Livingston, in my opinion, I can't say that this was his magnum opus. I can't. And you know what's weird? Even though the referee, and just to let you guys know, the referee is Joe Cortez, keep that in mind. Tony Perez was the referee for the McClellan-Sullivan fight, while a guy named Joe O'Neill will be the referee for the final match. But we'll get to that in a moment. It's kind of weird that Livingston raises his hands, and then he tells Rick Elvis Parker to come over here, so Rick just comes behind him and just smiles with him, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. But ridiculous or not, I can't say much about this fight. Like, even though the fight, the knockout, and everything going on, they do show us replay of the first round knockout and everything, which is crazy enough. But again, I will say, though, it was pretty good for what it was. You can look up the interview if you want to listen to what Livingston had to say about the fight and such. All I know is, as starting out with everything else, he did say that he was preparing for everything about this. He was happy that this fight went down as it is. And he liked to thank all the guys that for everything else, for everyone commented on with a great fight, with nice right hand. Everything about this fight was good. I will say, though, guys, I will hereby induct Anthony Stevenson versus Livingston Bramble into the Mr. Gloat 10-round boxing Hall of Fame. If you're all in favor, say aye. Aye. That's what I thought. Aye. So, yeah, I have to say this was a great fight for what it was, and I'm just satisfied about this because this fight was entertaining for what it was, and with the entirety of the first fight, this fight was pretty damn good, and I wish some fans can remember this fight for what it was because this fight was pretty damn good. It really was. And even though along the way, due to them fixing their gloves, their tape, and this or that, and with Carl Sullivan and the Jarrell McClellan fight being another awesome fight for a quick knockout, quick cash, this or that, and then this 10-round fight became just so unbelievable, I gotta say, this was pretty good at its time. So, Michael Moore versus Bert Cooper for the vacant WBO Heavyweight Championship. Said before, guys, the WBO belt is not a major belt at this time. It's still minor as we speak. So, Ray Mercer vacated the title on December 28th, 1991, when he stripped the title for signing a bout with fighter Larry Holmes instead of his mandatory challenger, Michael Moore. With all that being said, it took them several months to fight this fight, and now with Bert Cooper being the new replacement for this fight, is on fire. So the first round of this fight comes in. Both guys, I'm shocked about this fight because not even 10 seconds into this fight, Bert Cooper comes in, throws punches, he throws uppercuts. Both guys are throwing heavy-duty punches at each other, and Bert pushes Michael into the ropes, and not even but not even 1 minute into the fight, only 30 seconds into the fight, he's throwing left, right, heavy power punches, pushes him into the rope, and Michael takes a knee with 41 seconds in the first round for a knockout. But wait, there's more, because it even gets better. He comes in, he's throwing uppercuts. Bert is doing everything. He pushes out Michael into the neutral corner. Michael is just doing his own thing as he's trying to do. And by the way, guys, during an interview, they also point out coming up next, they're going to do a Tim Witherspoon and Everett Martin fight, which that's just another fight happening on another show or something, as the fight is happening. So both guys, Bert is pushing Michael Moore to the rope. He throws a right, misses a left. Moore does a right, hits a left, misses a left, throws a right, and down goes Bert Cooper. And the crowd are screaming bananas. It's so unbelievable of what's happening here. And Donald Trump is outside of the ring standing up watching this fight as well. And by the way, looking at Donald Trump outside of the ring watching this fight and seeing how his hair looked back then is pretty interesting. So with 1 minute left of the fight, you can say to yourself that Bert Cooper won this round as a 10-8 score. But because Michael Moore scored a knockout in this round as well, so technically both of them did not lose points. Both of them mean that if this fight ends with both of them scoring each a knockout in the same round, that means the score will be a 10-9 for either one of them. So no one lost a point. Michael Moore comes in. He pushes Bert Cooper into the ropes with the last 30 seconds of the fight. And Bert does the same thing. And all Michael Moore does in this fight is just block his gloves the entire fight. The entire fight is him doing this. And with only 10 seconds left of the fight, the referee, Joe, times the fight because Bert lost his mouthpiece. He picks up the mouthpiece, tells Michael to go neutral corner, puts the mouthpiece. They tell them to wash up the mouthpiece. Joe takes the mouthpiece, puts it back in Bert Cooper, and the remainder seconds of the fight is over. So the first round was a great banger. And even though Michael Moore, in my opinion, won the first round, the next two rounds are not going to be that good for, are not going to be any bad for, wow, this one's going to be interesting. So we come to round two. Michael Moore's strategy in this entire fight is simple. All he does is go to the corner, looks for the punches, while Bert is just throwing every single punch. Sometimes there's going to be a body punch, uppercut, sometimes jabs upstairs and downstairs for Michael, and uppercuts for Bert, and multiple jabs, and pushes him to the corner. So guys, during the interview after the fight, Michael Moore stated it was mostly a Manuel Stewart thing of why he was doing that is because he can see the punches easily while they're coming after him. And while doing it, he can come back and start throwing punches of his own. So even though it was a Manuel Stewart thing, here's the problem. Just to let you viewers know, Emmanuel Stewart and Michael Moore weren't really good friends at the time. And this was actually 1.5 years before Teddy Atlas would train Michael Moore. And we're going to get to that information of the aftermath of this after the fight is over. By the way, Michael Moore was sentenced to, I think, community service or jail for punching a cop after a cop went to the house after a family argument because Michael Moore was drinking and he wasn't good with alcohol after his tough win against Alex Stewart last year ago in his third heavyweight fight. So can't say much about that. But at this time, this was already a tough moment for Michael Moore. He wasn't the guy that he used to be. So people were already questioning about is he going to win this fight. So Bert Cooper, again, just uppercuts all day. And he just pushes him to Bert's corner, which is the only place where they would go. So after the end of round two is over, Bert Cooper does it without hesitation. Bert Cooper attacks Michael, comes in with multitude of more punches, And not even 30 seconds into the third round, he throws uppercuts, multitude of jab, heavy-duty punches. Moore takes the dive just to protect himself with a knockout. So Bert comes in with another knockout of his own. If Michael can't score a knockout here, then that means this score will be a 10-8 for Bert, and Bert is winning the fight. And Donald Trump, as said before, he's outside of the ring smiling and enjoying this fight, even though this is a minor weight title bout we're watching here. So it goes to show you how far the WBO has gone and the IBO hasn't. Michael Moore, again, throws uppercuts, throws every single jab and cross. With 1 minute and 51 seconds left of the third round, Bert throws a heavy punch right right below the belt of Michael, and the referee times the fight to give him a warning for keeping your punches high. But it doesn't stop him. And again, guys, you don't know what punches are downstairs and what punches could be upstairs, if they were illegal or not. Oh, and with 1 minute and 30 seconds left, they show us commentators that coming up next will be Tim Witherspoon and Martin Neverin. They show us that again for the second time. Who cares? Because at this moment, I don't know if he's even ready. Anyway, with only 20 seconds later, Bert Cooper loses his mouthpiece for a second time with another minute left of the fight. So they go back to the corner. Trainer sprinkles the water of the mouthpiece. Referee grabs it, puts it back in Bert's mouth, and they continue the round. And nothing happens. Bert Cooper is throwing everything at him. And the round ends. So I'm assuming, guys, I'm going to assume the reason why Bert Cooper was doing that is that the thing is, guys, Bert Cooper is not 6 feet tall. Bert Cooper, as on BoxRec states that Bert Cooper here, it states here that Bert Cooper, as for all men in heavyweight boxing, states that he was 5'11.5" and Michael Moore was 6'2". Both of them were 78-inch reach advantage. Well, Cooper is a half-inch more, even though he's orthodox and Moore is southpaw. 26-year-old Bert, 24-year-old Michael, 27-8 for Bert, and 28-0 for Michael. The only thing you have to know is this: both of these guys were young, in their mid-20s. The thing you people might not want to know is that at the time, Bert Cooper was 224.25 pounds in this fight. 217 for Michael Moore. But for Bert Cooper, he looked like he was a much bigger man and more fatter because of his height. That's the problem. So when you watch that prospectively, that makes you viewers wonder the absolute truth about this. Really, it really is. Because Bert Cooper is a big guy. And at this moment, coming into the end of the third round, I assume that because of the mouthpiece, I'm assuming that Bert Cooper or maybe Rick Elvis Parker or anyone else said, you better spit out your mouthpiece, Bert, because if you don't, that only depends how tired you might get. So I assume that was intentional, because maybe Bert was going to get tired or something in the majority of the round. So they wanted him to save his energy, take it easy, and then as the referee says, continue the fight, go on in and charge and attack him. So I don't know if that's the truth, even though Bert Cooper and Rick Elvis Parker, and even though the trainers, they're gone, they've passed away, no one's alive. So we'll never know. All we know is that whatever the strategy was for Bert Cooper, it seemed like it was working. It really looked like it was working out for him. So we come into the fourth round of this fight, and even though this was a tough round to judge, so as the bell rings, Michael Moore's trainer are still wiping off the stuff in their corner, but they don't care. And by the way, it also states with only 10 seconds into this round, it stated that the commentators of this show were Joe Goosen, Len Berman, and Riddick Bowe. And to be honest, I have heard Riddick Bowe and some other moments they've talked about in this, but again, guys, I'm not into the commentary thing, so don't question me about that. Pretty much. So Bert Cooper, again, comes in, pushes him to the neutral corner, and just throws punches, body punches, blow the belt, whatever. And just like Michael Moore does the same thing. Bert Cooper does do a little bit of some George Foreman cross block punches like this sometimes. Sometimes the punches would connect him. Michael Moore sometimes throws a punch on the belt line. Bert does the same thing a second later. He goes for heavy uppercuts for Michael. Both guys are touching heads. The fourth round was just them going to one neutral corner, which is the same neutral corner they'd done in the entire fight, and only shows Bert pushing Michael to his corner. He throws a heavy left uppercut, misses, pushes Moore, and then Moore, out of nowhere, pushes back to the rope as well. The entire fight is just them pushing to a corner rope the entire time. Bert Cooper finally throwing some jabs here or there, some heavy-duty punches, because all you're seeing is Michael Moore and Bert just throwing every single punch they got in the tank. That's about it. So mostly they were just in the neutral corner the entire fight. And again, Michael setting up multitude of punches here or there. With 20 seconds left of the fight, we get a couple more jab downstairs punches on the belt line by Bert Cooper. The referee does nothing to warn them because he doesn't know whether they're body punches or not. But he just lets them go. So the round comes to an end with Michael winning the round. It was an even round for both. And with both guys getting hurt, and even though this is the last time Emmanuel Stewart will ever train for Michael Moore at this moment, they cut back to commercial break with a right eyelid being white from Bert Cooper, showing that he already has scar tissue or something on his face. But again, guys, the real moment is about to come. We come to round 5. Both Bert punches Moore. He pushes him back to the neutral corner again. He pushes Michael Moore. He pushes him. And by the way, the commentators even point out that Bert Cooper was getting tired when coming out of his stool during the start of the 5th round. But that didn't stop Bert. Even though Bert was tired, he just came in, throwed uppercuts. He pushes Michael to his own neutral, to his own corner, throwing out everything he can in the cat. For the entire minute is just him going to being in the corner. They're not using the entire ring. They're just using one of each 2 corners for the entire fight. And it's near Bert Cooper's corner. So with only 1 minute and 37 seconds left of the fight, Michael finally pushes Bert. Bert finally backs up. He goes forward, sets up a right, and then out of nowhere, with a body punch here, another body punch there, and Michael sets up a right jab again, and the fight ends with a left, right, right. Bert tries to dodge and weave. He goes for a right body punch, goes for an uppercut, kind of connected, but not much of a hurtful, painful there. Michael goes for another couple punch jabs on the right. He goes for a slow punch jab here, there, and then the fight ends. He pushes Bert out of the way. Bert goes for a right uppercut, and then as he puts his gloves down, Michael connects a perfect right. He goes for a perfect left, another right, another left, right uppercut, left heavy cross to the left, and Bert goes down, lands on the bottom rope of his corner, down with 57 seconds left of the 5th round. The referee counts 1, 2, 3, 4. He gets up at 5, sitting up. He's just sitting down as a count 5. Referee counts 6. Referee counts 7. Bert is still sitting on his butt. He finally tries to get on. Count of 8. He puts one knee on the canvas. On the count of 9, he has his one knee on the canvas. He gets up before Joe even counts to 10, gets back up. He even has a cut right below the eye. As he's finally getting back up, you get to see a little bit of a scrape on his right eye here, bleeding all over himself. The referee says, "Are you okay?" He does not respond, and the referee waves the fight out with 2 minutes and 21 seconds of the 5th round. Just 39 seconds left of the fight. Michael Moore, the new WBO heavyweight championship. And during the fight promo, he even points out his fighting stance, what his strategy was. He thanks God. He thanks for all this and thanks for everyone for helping him to get here, this or that. And that's about it. So what happened during the aftermath after this fight? Well, before we end this episode, because we're almost 2 hours into this, Bert Cooper would never be the same fighter again, because after this, a year later, he would lose against journeyman fighter Mike Weaver. He would lose 4 months later against future champion Corey Sanders, and then lose a fight tournament that same year. He lost against promising contenders like Jeremy Williams by a disqualification after his Larry McO'Donnell fight. He lost against former champion Chris Bert in 97. And after he even lost against Alexander Zolkin, Samson Pohula, he fought against an undefeated 18-0 fighter named Richie Melito on July the 29th, 1997 for the vacant WBF World Heavyweight Championship. And guess what? Bert Cooper knocks him out at 1 minute and 51 seconds of the first round to become heavyweight championship. Unfortunately, that would be it for Bert Cooper, because he would lose another fight 2 months later after that, comes back in 99, losing against fighters like Derek Jefferson, Fresno Kendo, and then he retired again. He comes back in 2001. He loses against promising contender of Darnell Wilson in 2002, 1 year after his loss against Joe Messi in 2001. And even though he did loss against Darrell Wilson, not Darnell, but Darrell Wilson in September 2002, that would be his retirement. Unfortunately, 8 years later, he would make a comeback in 2010 with a win by a last round 6-round knockout. He scores a 6-round split decision in February. 2 months later, he loses in a second-round TKO against 7-0 Luis Ortiz. And then a year later, in 2012, he lost against Chauncey Welliver for the WBC Continental Americas title, and Carl Davis, a nobody, in September that same year, ended Bert Cooper by round 2 TKO for good. As for Michael Moore would not be friends with Emmanuel Stewart anymore. He actually decided to be with another trainer some months later. He would only have one fight with them in November, and then he decided to switch gyms to go with Dan Duva and to actually train with them by the month of February and April. Again, nothing interesting happened, and they decided after the month of June was over with the James Pritchard fight, they brought in Teddy Atlas, and him and Michael Moore trained together. They had their fight against Mike Evans in December of 93, and, well, by 94, we'll talk about that some other time. So, yeah, it just goes to show you, boxing back then was pretty interesting at its time for what it was. So, all I can say about this, about the Bert Cooper and Michael Moore fight, is that it just goes to show you that this WBO title, the WBO would have been a little bit of a legit title back in the day. So, it just goes to show you how they put so much effort into this entire show. And all I can say is, with all this being said, I think even though two boxers had to lose their first pro fight months later, not even by ending the year with a bang after this show, with Gerald McClellan would become champion a year later, and Livingston Bramble would have one more win left in his career because of that big win. And then after that, his entire fights would be lost against guys like Rodney Moore, Roger Mayweather, Kostya Tsuzu, James McGurk, Louis Vader, Shannon Taylor, Soren Sodergaard, Charles Murray. Like, these are some dangerous good fighters back in the day. They were promising. They were promising fighters. All I can say is, with this talent going on, this was actually a pretty good show. Gerald McClellan was a great start for the opener of the fight. I would almost have to give that a great 4-star match for the start. The Livingston and Anthony fight has to be one of the best fights of the entire of this fight, and I would almost have to give that a 4-star classic fight. I was almost going to give it a 5-star classic, but I decided to go nice on it. While Michael Moore and Bert Cooper was definitely a 5-star out of 5. That was a great match on this show. Guys, I would almost have to give this show an A. Even though there are 3 matches on this show, this was actually a great show for what it was at the time. So all I can say is it was a good win. I think it was great for Dan Duva and how much effort they put into it, because all I can say is, with all of the talent being in one position of this entire show, it just goes to show you that there was some interesting new talent in boxing at the time. So it wasn't as bad as it is. So pretty much all I can say is, with the New Jersey Athletic Commission board doing the best they can, with great knockouts in this show and a great 10-round fight, this was a great show. I give this show an A. This was actually pretty entertaining. It had its own moments, a quick fight, a heavyweight title fight that wasn't disappointing, a 10-round fight against a past prime fighter and an up-and-coming fighter that was mostly a journeyman at that moment. It was good, and I enjoyed every bit of it. So with that being said, thank you, viewers, for watching this. And with that being said, the Mr. GLOAT podcast will see you guys next time when we try to find out, is Tony Yoka going to fight again? But you know what? If that doesn't happen, it is what it is. So with that being said, thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you next time.